I'm really excited to be here today with everyone. I have with me somebody that I've known, probably somebody that has known me ever since I was a kid. I grew up in Lebanon, and I have with me Fady Che, who is a family friend, an old neighbor, and today is a very respectable business professional as international vice president for Gojo International, covering the global markets. And did I get this one right, Fady?
It's vice president, general manager, global business for Gojo Industries. Good.
Wonderful. So I'm gonna just start off with a small question, and it's kind of a loaded question. How did you go from Lebanon to where you are? And I know it's a loaded question, but you can dissect it as in any way, shape, or form you'd like to do so. So up to you, sir.
Well, I'm glad to be here and having to see you and talk with you, Ramez. As you said, being an old friend and knowing you as a kid, it's almost like, my brother that we reconnect every once in a while when we're in Dubai. The story is a little bit of an interesting story for me personally, is as we know, most of the Lebanese that we grew up in the war, and that was very tragic for a lot of our people and our friends. And that's probably one of the main reasons that made me leave Lebanon and go to the US. I was probably one of the fortunate ones that had a US citizenship and a passport because I was born in the US. So that allowed me a little bit more flexibility and easy to move back to the US.
Wonderful. So now you're in the US, Fady, and I guess, did you finish your education there, or how did you, go from getting to the US to then moving into Gojo International?
Yeah. Okay. My education started in the American University of Beirut, where I finished my bachelor in mathematics, and then I came in to the US to do my MBA, and I did my MBA in here in the US in Kent State in Ohio.
Okay. Wonderful. So, got your degree in mathematics in Lebanon, your master's of business administration from Kent University in Ohio, and now, and then what happened? And now, how, how did things start for you from a professional perspective?
Well, after graduating from MBA, I always had a passion to be an international, always wanted to do some international business. But at the time, the choices in the area was very little bit limited from international companies in Cleveland, Ohio. And so I started the career in a couple of banking industries and, insurance companies, and then an opportunity opened up in the international business at Gojo Industries, which are, as you know, the maker of Purell hand sanitizer. And when I saw that it was an international opportunity, I jumped on that opportunity and I got it. And I started as one of their export manager in their operation, and worked my way now to a vice president of general manager of their international business.
Wonderful. Fady, I know in that process, you got married. You had a beautiful surprise when Cindy, came home and said, "Honey, we're having triplets," or maybe you were with her at the time.
I was with her at the time. I was with her at the time, and it was a shock and a surprise, and not to believe it at the time.
So I can imagine.
Having three, as much as it's exciting now, but it was a shock back then. There was not much excitement. It was more of a shock to have that, but yeah.
Wow. So I wanted to bring that in because I remember visiting you in one of the summers, and I think you had like a factory in your kitchen making the.
They were newborn back then. Yeah, they were newborn. Absolutely. With doing 36 milk bottles, feeding bottles every other day.
36. And so I remember going to your kitchen and I'm saying, what is this? And you're like, Habibi, you just have to feed one. The other ones are waiting. Then you go for the other one and then the other one. And then there's always one waiting because you and Cindy can only handle 2 kids at a time. And, maybe I can ask you, just thinking back at at those days when you were, let's say, starting your career, then of course having to balance such an important responsibility together with your lovely wife Cindy, and kind of building and raising your awesome children. What are some of the, I would say, the biggest hurdles or challenges you had to overcome, and how did you deal with that? Keeping keeping your eye on what's important, both the family and work from that perspective.
Yeah, and I think, throughout our personal and career life, you have challenges that you not anticipate, as most of us anticipate to have children, or not everybody, but when you'd go down that path and say, okay, and we're going to have kids, you anticipate it's going to be one and the second and maybe whatever you decide to have. But we were dealt a hand of having 3 at once, so you had to learn to a little bit be more organized. I give a lot of credit to Cindy, my wife, that was a nurse back then, and she was very disciplined about keeping track of what's going on in the personal life of the babies at the time. But then you have to balance, everything in life is a balance. You take what you have in your personal life, and then you try to balance it what you have in your professional life, and you keep it at a balance. But that balance is never always what we call a 50-50. Some days you've got more, where it's more your work life that is 70-80 and your personal is 20, and then sometimes you try to flip that. As long as at the end you have a little bit of a balance, that's one way of keeping it. The second thing is to enjoy what you're doing, and I've always tell people that work for me, if you get up in the morning and you don't like what you're doing, come and talk to me. We can find ways, we can find different career path, or maybe different companies to help you to work with, because you don't have to live in a world that constantly you're getting up every morning and you're not happy.
Yeah, dragging going to work, and I love that. Come talk to me, and we'll help you, whether it's internally or externally, and I think today a lot of people are afraid of talking with their managers, bosses, people that they work with, and just love that.
Right. You're absolutely right. That's why I emphasize every 6 months from your hire date, I come and talk to you, and every time I get a chance, let me know if you're waking up in the morning. Now, some morning you wake up because you've got issues going on, but in general, if you're miserable at what you're doing at work, come and talk to me. Let's find out how we can help. If you were hired within an organization, then that means the organization saw something good in you. So let's try to explore that. And sometimes it's not a match.
Amazing. And I think as long as it's being talked about, then they say knowing a problem or identifying a challenge is halfway solving it. By not talking about it, ignoring it doesn't go away. But when you talk about it, it does.
Ramez, you're absolutely right. And this is part of the communication that you put in with your employees. Don't be afraid. Your door is always open, whether you're a manager or an employee or a vice president or a director, whatever it is, you have to have your door open to the people around you.
Fady, I want to dive into your role in the expert, and I don't know this part of the business. I'm just making an assumption in here based on my experience by working with other organizations that have an export division. And normally the export team is, consists of very few people. Sometimes it's just the export manager themselves, and then they go and build a network an external network, a network with other markets, and then slowly but surely nurture that, and then find ways to drive the business on an international level. I guess here, my question to you is, what type of a structure maybe you started with, and what type of a structure you are with right now, and trying to kind of gauge your working with an internal team, or is your team mainly in all these wonderful countries where you have whether direct sales, direct contact, people on the ground, or you're working through third-party distributors?
Okay, so in general, Gojo Industries, we were not the P&G of the world and the conglomerate of international. So we had always a hybrid model, and when I started with the company, it was a very small hybrid model that we've grown in the last 20 years. And the model was basically, you rely on some distributors around the world that you and your team, you keep going out and try to find those distributors. And then you start putting boots on the ground and you put in companies within areas. So the model that we have now is, and the team consisted of about 72 people. And some of them are spread out all around the world: Canada, Mexico, Australia, Japan, and there's some in Europe too. The 72 are excluding Europe, but some of them are on the ground in those countries, and some of them are locally here in Ohio, and they all support international distributors and international customers. And the model works where the local boots on the ground work with the distributors directly, and they look for support from corporate for any resources. And then the markets that we don't have anybody representing us, then we deal directly with them from corporate.
Right. So when you look at your your organization today, and getting to where you are, what do you feel have been some of the challenges that you have faced, whether it's people challenges, structural challenges, or any type of a challenge? If you were to look at the biggest hurdles and what lessons you could share with us from those challenges and overcoming them, Fady.
So a couple of different challenges. You've got what we call the cultural challenges, and then you got what we call the business challenges. Mm-hmm. So the business challenges, as you have known me, because I've been with Gojo for 30 plus years, back then, the company was not well known internationally. Everybody here in the US knew Gojo, then they got to know Purell, but internationally, we were still what we call the new kid on the block. We were the new company. We were the company from the US that nobody knew about. So the first challenge was not to assume that everybody knew your company, and you had to build some of your business about that assumption, and then teach them and let them know who we are. So that's one of the on the business side. On the cultural side, it's always important when you're dealing with different cultures and different languages to allow time for communication twice than you normally do when language is not a barrier. So when language is not a barrier, but when language is a barrier and you have culture that's different, you have to be more attentive and more in tune with what's going on. And I always tell my sales team, God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. You listen twice, you talk once. And that's something you have to learn to listen, because if somebody English is not their first language and they're translating as they're speaking, you have to pay attention to what they're saying, because they're trying to give you as much understanding as they can. And you have to try to then translate what they're saying and then respond to them. So it's very important to listen to your customers, listen to your sales team that are overseas, listen to your distributors, and try to, don't be afraid to answer the question with another question. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you're trying to say. I didn't quite get is this what you were asking me? And then facilitate that, and not assume that the first thing that comes out of their mouth is exactly what they were saying. And then especially when you start getting into a little bit of a conflict situation. So culturally, you have to do the language, you have to do, and you have to be open to adaptation because of the cultures are different.
So I love this. I think you've brought in a really nice angle. One is the people don't know who we are. And today, I think a lot of organizations that want to expand sometimes might have the wrong assumptions, starting into meetings or conversations with the same positional power or perceived power that they might have from any local players. Yet we get that is not the case. So in terms of building that relationship, building that trust, and giving an opportunity for the other party to get to know maybe not just the brand, but the value of the people, your values, the way you do business, your reputation, what you stand for, and then finding a way to see is, how do we then, coexist? How do we bring who we are and who you are together, and we make this even a more successful partnership. So that is fantastic.
Yeah, and that's very important from a coexisting. You, as an individual, you're trying to establish a relationship with a distributor or a customer. You don't want to come across that you're the one who knows everything and you're coming to impose or trying to sell them or trying to give them what what you know, because you don't want to come as this American, English, whatever, Lebanese arrogant that's coming to sell me something. You want to come across that, I'm a person and I have some knowledge, but I'm here to help you with that. I'm not here to impose, and I'm not here to tell you how it needs to be done. I'm here to tell you how it was done in certain countries, but let's see how it can work because you're the expert in that country.
Right. I love what you're saying because a lot of time there is a some of the principal organizations I've worked with that you look at international as the dumping ground, if you know what I mean. Whenever you stop growing in your local markets, let's just find new places to simply ship stuff and help us hit our targets. That is one approach. I think, again, if I might say, a lot of the smaller organizations find that just making, selling the quantity might be appealing in the short term. But in the long term, if you send the quantities to the wrong markets and you have the wrong partners on the ground, you can end up doing a lot more damage to the brand and to the entire, goodwill that you have built. And I guess one thing that I really, makes music to my ear is the concept of partnership, the concept of choosing the right distributor, the concept of even being aware of the lack of potential communication gaps due to cultural and linguistic capabilities, so that you have double complexity. And I think today the message that maybe I want to highlight here is that once you enter into a distribution relationship with an international player, right, it needs to be an ongoing relationship, and it's something where you gotta set a common goal, a common objective. What are we going after on both sides, and then what can we do to help you out, and what can you do to bring this mission and vision on to life in your local market. So maybe a question here around selecting those relationships. And when you go into a market, it's a clean slate. How do you are there any tips from entering multitudes of different markets that you tend to gravitate towards a certain type of structure or certain type of psychographic within a certain organization, the demographic, psychographic, so what do they value and things like that. That would help you in selecting and choosing the right partner, Fady?
Yeah. So let me back up a little bit. It all starts from the mission of the company. If the mission of the company is very, say, centric into growing into one country in the US. But then you're right. This is where the branding they don't care about it internationally. They'll dump the products and they, like you said, they'll sell some products here and there, and that can hurt them in the long run. So if you follow the mission, and the mission says, look, we want to be the global, leader in that industry. So then you have to start looking at customers and distributors and partners that start sharing some of your same vision, mission, and objectives. So when we start looking at a partner, whether it's a distributor or a customer, or even hiring people at the local level, we start saying, think globally and act locally. You have to act as a local. The problems around the world are the same. So you think global, the pandemic has taught us, look how fast COVID spreads. Everybody had the same problem, patients dying, patient needed ventilations, people can't go out, people in the restaurants can't eat out. So the problems were the same, but the way you give the solution might be a little bit different based on the country and what is the structure of the country, not just from structure of logistics and building, but even the culture and how they do business and how they interact within pandemic. Some government are more stricter than others when there's a pandemic like that. So you have to be aware of these things. And that's where, and not just in pandemic, in normal days, you have to look at a partner that can share some of the vision and some of the missions that you're trying to accomplish. If your mission is, for example, for us is health and well-being solution, and if somebody's selling, let's say, cigarettes, and nothing against cigarettes, but that doesn't work from our standpoint. So you have to look at some partners that have some commonality from what you're trying to accomplish from a mission and a vision.
Awesome. I think this is very insightful. And today, many individuals sometimes might have smaller organizations where maybe their mission and vision might not be fully aligned or fully developed. They might know what makes them tick on the inside, yet highly recommend maybe doing, there is mission and vision exercises you can go to help uncover what you are all about, where you're going. And the more you structure that, and they say, there's a quote out there that says, thoughts are things have gravity, and gravity attracts. So the moment you can verbalize your mission vision, so thoughts are things have gravity, and gravity attracts, you then align, you create a path in which people with similar values, similar beliefs, similar goals start lining up, and there you are, getting your potential partners, and then it's all about building that relationship and then seeing what works and what doesn't.
You're absolutely really right, Ramez. And a lot of times, you deal with customers that don't have a clear, written vision and mission. But if you talk to them and listen to them, you can feel it, you can sense it, and they can express it, but they've never put it on a paper. And you can see from their behavior around in the organization, around their employees, around their customers. And that's more of an indication than, okay, something on a piece of paper that you're trying to show. That's where, the action is a lot stronger than the words on a piece of paper. And,
as you're describing that, I'm thinking, sometimes you can, as you said, you can sense, you can feel from the interaction that the values are right. It might not be on a piece of paper. And sometimes people have things on a piece of paper and they act in a completely different way. So I think it's just that alignment.
Exactly. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah.
And, one thing I wanted to ask, Fady, is with relations to going to markets, I would say sometimes you might choose to work with a partner that or actually, have you ever had an opportunity to find such partners where maybe they were not as elaborate, they didn't have things very well documented and clear, yet you could sense from the way they're interacting, from what they're saying, what they're doing, they actually were the right partners, and you've embarked on that journey and where things are, and maybe vice versa, and where you've maybe thought you had good partners, which maybe didn't end up in the best locations.
Yeah, and that always happens, Ramez. It's what we call a day in the life of a market developer.
Right.
You go in and you might have all the right things ticking, and you might think this is the right distributor, but then within a year or two, something happened and things don't work out because of the clashes, what you're saying, in the culture or the mission or what they're trying to accomplish. But those are things you'll learn as you go along. And I've had multiple success and multiple failure from that perspective, where a customer comes in and say, yes, we want to be partners and we want to do everything with you guys, but in the behind the scene, they had different motives and different intentions, and you don't uncover those until a little bit later. And sometimes you get into an organization that, whether it's a small, or a lot of them are not, the number one in the country, and they have a lot of the same values and your same things that you believe in, never written on a piece of paper, but as you meet and start understanding, it's easier to see that, and you feel very comfortable with that. Now, none of them are an immediate failure of success. They all need to be nurtured. They all need to be, taken care of and supported all the time.
Yeah, I think from describing that, a day in the life of a market developer, we all have these good days, good decisions, and sometimes not so good days and not so good decisions. Yet at the end, it's about confronting what is not working. It's about spending the time communicating, similar to what you started by saying, if things are not working, come talk to me. I think here we gotta keep, and again, that concept of nurturing the relationship. The more you spend time with your markets, with your people, the better you are in servicing them. Now, I maybe build a little bit on that. Spending time, you said there are multitudes of different countries. How do you, as a international leader, prioritize your time? I think that could be a great insights for people that have similar aspirations or similar roles.
Well, I mean, it's important, and this is very important in the early process of hiring people, to take plenty of time to get to know the person, and then have different people interview them to get to know them very well. Because a one-dimensional interview, I can interview Ramez, Helou, and I get to know him from one dimension that I'm asking for. But if we bring other people to interview Ramez, we'll get a little bit more dimensional. And hiring the right people sometimes might take a long time, and people get frustrated, but do it once and don't do it every 3 to 6 months is the best thing you can go after. Yes, it might take longer to find the right person, but once you find him, then you provide them with the tools, you provide them with the training, you provide them to have access to you whenever they feel the need, and then you're the support for them. The days where you demand things from your new hire to go and do things are a little bit different now, where you say, look, I'm here to support you. Tell me what you need and what are some of the obstacles you have, and let's see how we can work that together. And then you start building that relationship, you're building the knowledge in them, and then you're building the trust, and then you go let them do what you hired them to do. You hired them to do one thing, let them go and do it, and let's see how good they are, but you provide them with the tools and you just support them.
Right. So that's a whole topic in itself. people the opportunity to go perform as opposed to just being on top of them and choking them to death in some occasions. And I talk about the EDIC principle. You educate, you demonstrate, you let someone imitate, and then you give them feedback. And it's that vicious or that continuous loop. Set objectives. Okay, do they know how to do it? Let me, if not, let me give them that first, second, let them do it, give them feedback, make sure that it's going in the right direction, and then let them fly. And then they'll surprise you, if you do it right. So
absolutely. You have to let them do what they do best that you hired them for.
Right.
And you provide them, like you said, with education.
Yeah. Fady, I'm going to shift a little bit on the topic of selling, the topic of dealing with, a complex organization. I guess in your case, you deal with hospitals, with clinics, with, industries, with a whole bunch of different channels out there. And if you were to kind of looking at it from an international perspective. So you have your troops on the ground, your distributors, your direct sales teams. And what do you see are some of the patterns that, people maybe in the US might say, well, this is the way that things are in the US, but you're seeing the same thing happening maybe in other parts of the world, some of the same challenges. And in a way, it's kind of a universal language that sales professionals, business developers would need to be aware of. Anything coming to mind?
That's a great question. And from our industries, what we've always said, the problems are the same around the world. Okay, we take one example of in healthcare, patients are sick. That's the same. Nurses are taking care of them. Healthcare people are taking care of them, wants them to feel better. So, and then you take it a step more, nurses always wants to stay, keeping things healthy, keeping things clean, and sanitized, and making sure the patient is taken care of. So when you look at that, that's a worldwide problem. In the food industry, when you're making food for selling, same thing. You trying to avoid contamination. Doesn't matter if you're making it in India, Japan, China, US, UK. What you're trying to do is deliver, clean, healthy food that people can consume. So when you identify that the problems are the same, but the solution might be a little different, the way you build the solution, it has to be a little bit, it has to be tailored to that country or to that market specific. So it might be a same product, but it may be in a different format to be delivered. It might be a different fragrance. It might be a different color, or, those are things that you can solve for after you understand what the problem is. And if the problem is universal, and then the solution has to be different, that's the way to get to the market.
Mm-hmm. Can you elaborate maybe on some examples that you find that can bring this topic to life, Fady, from your?
Sure. So in our world of hand sanitizing, let's take in the hospital setting, everybody wants to sanitize, wash their hands and sanitize their hands, whether it's a nurse in Japan or a nurse in Dubai or a nurse in the US. Okay. A nurse, before they walk in to see the patient, they need to sanitize and wash their hands. Okay. The example that we use in the US and in a lot of the countries, you have a dispenser on the wall, you sanitize your hands, and then you can go in and see the patient. Great. Dispensers on the wall. Simple. Okay. You go to Japan, same problem, right? They want to sanitize their hand. But in the Japanese culture, they don't like to put things on the wall, or the walls are not accessible to put dispensers on. So now how do you deliver this? You put a bottle that the nurse carries all the time with her, and it's on her body with a little bit of a purse, and she uses it every time she walks into place. So that was a solution that was only specific for Japan because that's how they operated. Same product, one is in a dispenser, one is in a bottle, but it allowed us to fulfill the same problem in two different markets or different countries.
Yeah, I probably it'd be very. I would say if somebody was a little bit more not as open to that idea, not as open to looking at, how would we do it? In a way we end up, they say the answer a lot of time is not in the box, it's out of the box. So here you just have to kind of redefine, go back to the drawing board and say, well, what are the behavioral patterns of people in Japan? What is acceptable there and what isn't that could allow this specific problem to be solved? And you innovated and came up with a little pouch. And I think today, if you have a nurse, if you give a pouch for a nurse in the US, they'd be like, excuse me, I'm not putting that, I'm not carrying some extra weight with me.
Right.
But it made perfect sense on the other part of the world where, and probably, I don't know, did you guys start the trend? Did you guys start that in innovation, or was it there in some way, shape, or form, and you maybe have improved upon it or anything like that?
I think it was more improved upon it because in Japan, the nurses were used to carrying a lot of things, and even in the US, you got the pens, you got your papers, you got the pockets and all that. So the important thing was to listen to how they were trying to give us a solution, not us saying, well, no, you have to put the dispenser on. Well, no, this is what the regulation says. And they came up with some, well, I carry a lot of things in my pockets, in my jacket, in my what do you call it, in my uniform. So another thing is, as long as it's not weighing 1 liter or 2 liters, I'll be happy with that. Yeah. So you just go back and you say, okay, what's the right sizing for a nurse carrying this, or a healthcare provider, whether it's a doctor or anybody else? So that's how we came up with the pouch.
Wonderful. So in a way, in Japan, do as the Japanese, in Rome, do as the Romans, and just kind of be open to that. So didn't expect such a comment or such a story that live story. That's a little bit of culture. That's a little bit of openness. That's a little bit of it's not our way or the highway. It's about adapting your ability to do business in that market.
And that's what makes you more successful from an international standpoint, trying to understand that the problem is the same, but the solution to that problem might vary by country.
Amazing. Okay. Just if we were to kind of look at your responsibility as a leader of a significant team, and looking at managing your team and maybe some of the biggest lessons that you've had. I know you've spoken about being open, but is there anything else that maybe you could give as tips and advice for current leaders of international markets to be on the lookout for as they evolve in their roles and as they maybe evolve and move on in their international roles, Fady?
Something that quickly comes to mind is somebody that can wear multiple hats, as you get into the international world. And even though if you're responsible in one country, you have to be able to pivot and move pretty quick. You have to be nimble. So looking for somebody who is agile, interested in wearing multiple hats, because not everybody can, be very effective wearing multiple hats. But you need both at the same time. But in the international world, when we're looking for people that are agile, have no issues wearing multiple hats, jumping from one project to another, and not doing the same thing again and again and again.
I'm as you're describing this, I'm gonna ask you maybe it's gonna either be a difficult question to answer. It might be like, come on, Ramez, you're putting me on the spot in here, but let's see what comes up. Somebody once asked me, Ramez, what's the biggest mistake you've made in in running your business. What's the biggest mistake, Fady, you've made in running your business or the business that you're in, and how did you come out of it? What was the lesson?
It's a biggest mistake and I look at it, is it in dollars or in monetary, or is it in personal? So there's a little bit of different in that.
Sure.
And as a young career person moving into the business world, I've made a couple of mistakes. The one that comes to mind pretty quickly, we were invoicing internationally, and I was responsible for some of the invoices and the shipment, and I completely, made calculation mistakes. And at the time it was about maybe $10,000, which is a big number. But the thing that I learned from it was my manager and the vice president right away came and says, what did we learn from that? And how do we avoid doing that? And that's the main thing, is when you get into those mistakes, you ask the people, okay, what did we learn from it? And how do we avoid that in the future? And that was one of my biggest mistakes, because I thought, well, back then, 20 plus years, boy, this is going to be like, I'm done. I got to find a different job because it's a lot of money when you're trying to grow an organization. That's from a, like what we call a big monetary mistake that now it's not millions of dollars, but at the time it felt to me like it was $1 million. Some of the other mistakes that I don't know if I call them big or not. Look, if you end up hiring the wrong person after you've done your due diligence and everybody interviewed them, it could be a mistake. And sometimes it costs you, because then you have to redo the whole process, the training and all that. And that happens. And I've done some of those, and some of it because I didn't listen to my team. Because, they did give me, they did give me the signs that, oh, this might not work. And I maybe ignored it. So now I'm more in tune when the team that we're doing an interview and hiring, they say to me, oh, there's this flag up. I try to dig into that and try to understand it more before we make that decision. Where in the past couple of mistakes I've done is I met somebody and I, had a good interview with them. I said, okay, you're hired, you're done. To find out 3 months, 6 months that this was not the right fit.
I know it's not an easy question here. I think the $10,000 mistake, it's a $10,000 investment that your leaders at the time, redirected that. What did we learn from that? I had a situation where a managing director of a distribution company lost a principal that's bringing the distribution company about $25 million of yearly sales, and that was a $25 million mistake. Now, when he went to submit his resignation to his board, the board went back with the same answer. They said, "Look, we just spent $25 million on a PhD or a master's degree in learning what not to do. Your resignation, we understand why you do that. We believe in you, and we want you to actually find us a partner that will bring us double this value, and we're confident you won't make that same mistake again." And you can imagine that feeling of that's on the inside when you have a board, basically cheering you on and telling you, "Look, okay, we live and learn." It's like, learn the lesson, forget the details. Learn the lesson, forget the detail. Just dust yourself up and move. And I think mistakes are much more valuable when they are I would say dissected, understood. Another great quote I live by is, life is always lived looking forward, yet life is understood looking backwards. And when you really look back and start analyzing things and saying, hey, what am I taking away from this, and how am I gonna be a better version of me moving forward? Fady, in Arabic بيقولوا ما بينشبع منك. This is really just the beginning of hopefully more of such conversations. I think next time you're in Dubai, maybe we'll have a live interaction versus a live Zoom interaction in here. Any last maybe comments that you'd like to share with our audiences? Any last tips and points of wisdom that you'd like to offer?
No, I think we a little bit talked about it, just listen twice and talk once. This is very important. Everybody's different, but it's very important to listen to what the person across the table from you is telling you. They have a reason they're there. They have a reason they're telling you that. And it's not all, about what you're wanting to tell them.
Wow. Okay. So that's been our session today. Sorry, my voice I don't know why, but it's just kind of something is stuck in my throat. But before we keep going, I just wanted to say thanks for everyone. And until next time, sell more, sell faster, and profitably. See you again.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Ramez. See you.